Next, I'd like to introduce Matt Schlapp from CPAC.
In my role as running CPAC, I have had these interesting experiences of people coming up and whispering in my ear and telling me about their stories. I've had people walk up and talk to me about the fact that they had such surgeries and how much they regretted it, and how much they wish that I would be more bold in talking about the fact that there's a big regret factor, not with every patient, but with a lot of patients. And it was kind of my first discovery into the fact that a topic that probably nobody, unless you deal with this as a parent or deal with this as a person you want to talk about, that this was a real controversy. Does this help a child or does this hurt a child? In the end, it seems like the compassionate thing to do is to listen to the healthcare community that hasn't been politicized. And I think one of the saddest things of everything in society becoming politicized, even questions around gender confusion have become politicized. And it's our obligation as decent Americans to try to pull back the politics and try to do what's right. I've also had people walk up to me as adults and say they've had such surgeries and that they would do it again. It's a big difference between an adult making a decision, which we can either agree with or not agree with, and doing this to a child and having it be a function of an ideology that's being pushed on our kids at a very young age. As the father of 5 girls, it worries me that school systems paid for with our taxpayer money cannot try to help a child deal with what is, I think, a very serious question of people who struggle with their gender, but instead work collaboratively with the parents to try to help the kid. I think what has happened is what we have been told would help kids. If you look at all the scientific studies, the opposite is happening. And I just want to say for all the members who are here today and who haven't experienced this with a loved one, it takes, once again, courage to do this as a legislator. I want to thank Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is soon to get her full legislative powers back, by the way. And if this is the type of thing that you're going to have the courage to do, I think that's something everybody needs to understand. The legislative process should be embraced again. People should introduce legislation on what they care about and what their constituents care about. Every expert should be able to talk about this, to give a corollary or a contrary point of view on it. Changes can be made to legislation if that's the will of the process. And what we ought to do, all of us, and I think it's all of us, who care about these kids, we ought to do what's right by them, even at times when it's awkward to discuss and to lead on. So once again, Chloe, thank you for being here today. You're not alone. You know that. There's lots of people who stand with you here today, and I think their voice should be the one we listen to. Thank you all very much.
So we just had a press conference over there with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a representative from Georgia. She brought up a bill that would basically ban the medical procedures on children to transition from one gender to another. Would you support that?
I would, yeah.
I don't have a comment.
No comment?
I'd support it.
Yeah, it's like common sense, right?
Yeah, seems like it.
Do you guys support gender transitioning surgeries for minors?
We are French, so we don't have...
It's okay. Do you support like little kids being able to change their gender under 18 without parental consent?
I never thought of it, but everyone should be what they want to be.
So like a 5-year-old should be able to say, hey, I want to change my gender and have my genitals rearranged?
I don't know. I think you should maybe think about it and be more mature.
Do you support minors being able to change their gender without parental consent? She's running away from me. Is that a yes or no?
So I'm not talking right now.
She's faster than I thought.
She's got on her ASICs.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. This is a very important issue we're talking about, transgenderism. And there is an effort spreading across America. It's a type of social contagion, is what some people are referring it to, and I think that's an accurate name. But this is where children under the age of 18, before they even hit puberty, many of them are being fast-tracked, they're being encouraged, and they're being allowed to do things and allow others like doctors, nurses, counselors to do things to their body before they're even grown up, before they're even old enough to vote, before they're even old enough to get a tattoo, before they're old enough to join the military, own a gun, drive a car, see an R-rated movie, or maybe just go to college or decide to not go to college, before they know what they want to be when they grow up. These kids are taking puberty blockers, taking hormone therapy treatment, getting double mastectomies even as young as 12 years old, hysterectomies, which is sterilization, and even castration. This should never happen in the United States of America. As a matter of fact, it should never happen anywhere in the world. But there's an ideology that is sexualizing children and pushing this among the most innocent kids, the most vulnerable in all of our society, and it has to end. I've introduced the Protect Children's Innocence Act, and I'm so proud to have Republican co-sponsors signing on, and there's more and more coming. And the reason why is because we want to protect kids. Republicans are the party of protecting children. Not only are we the party of protecting life in the womb, we want to protect kids' lives and their innocence as they grow up. Now, how on earth can this be happening in America? It's hard to even understand. But the fact that the medical industry, which is making billions of dollars on these genital mutilation surgeries on kids, is absolutely horrific. These are the things that nightmares are made of. But the real problem is not only is it happening to kids and they are thinking they're doing the right thing, many of them are realizing years later, just when they get a little bit older, that they have made a tragic mistake. And the damage is undoable. It's permanent. Double mastectomies, hysterectomies, castration, what testosterone does to a young woman's body, what puberty blockers do to a young boy growing as he's going through puberty. All of these changes are permanent and they cannot be undone. Suicide rates are very high in these young people that realize they've made a mistake, and they're coming out of the woodwork trying to warn others, trying to warn kids, don't do this. Just allow some time to grow up. You see, my bill, Protect Children's Innocence Act, is not an attack on anyone's sexuality, and it's not saying that grown-ups can't make changes they want to make. What it does is it just protects kids under 18, and it has to be done. The reason why it has to be a federal law is because there are states who are taking away parents' rights to protect their kids from these horrific surgeries. States like California, Washington, New York, and other Democrat-controlled states want to fast-track kids and tell parents they have no right to take away their children's desire for gender-affirming care. There's no such thing as gender-affirming care. As a matter of fact, there's only two genders, male and female. And this is a basic truth that we have to stay founded in. States like California have a bill right now being considered by Governor Gavin Newsom that would take away parents' rights to completely stop this, and it would make California a sanctuary state for trans kids. What it would actually do is it would make California a state-sponsored state for child abuse, sexual child abuse. Children should not be sexualized, and they should not be undergoing medical procedures like this. You know what they should be doing? They should be going to school. They should be growing up. They should be enjoying activities or sports, reading. They should be learning the basic fundamentals of education. And then they should be looking forward to who they want to be when they're grown up. So at this time, I would like to introduce a very special young lady. Her name is Chloe Cole. Chloe Cole has a story to tell because she knows firsthand what this transgender leftist ideology is doing to kids, because she went through it herself. And we're honored to have here today and very proud of how brave she is to come out. She is one of many of the D-trans community that is trying to warn kids. So I'd like to introduce to you right now Chloe Cole from California.
Over the past decade, there has been as high as a 4,000% increase in children being referred to so-called gender clinics across the United States. I was one of these children. My name is Chloe Cole, and I am an 18-year-old former transgender child. I transitioned from the age of 12 up until 16 when I realized it all was a lie. My story is a cautionary tale. Children and parents across the country have been caught off guard by gender ideology. Discussions about transgenderism and gender identity went from being a relatively benign social oddity to a doctrine that has invaded nearly every academic, medical, and educational institution, seemingly overnight. How did we get to this point? How did we get to the point where nearly every pediatric institution in the country considers it best practice to remove the healthy breast tissue of children while administering drugs typically used to chemically castrate high-risk sex offenders? Raising these important questions is not bigoted, and the refusal of activists to give straightforward answers should be seen as a major red flag. People across the entire political spectrum who believe that this practice is morally wrong have been told that they are fascists or bigots for even questioning this atrocity. Others have been convinced by self-proclaimed gender specialists that this is the only treatment that will not end in your child committing suicide. I believe Americans deserve to know the truth about this radical and perverse ideology marketed as necessary and life-saving healthcare. I was only 12 years old when I told my parents that I was a boy. Like many parents in that situation, they didn't have a clue what to do. They were scared and desperate for answers. They wanted what every parent wants for their child, for me to be okay and thrive. At 13 years old, on the advice of so-called medical professionals, I was put on puberty-blocking medication, and only a month later, I was given my first testosterone injection. The gender clinic presented my parents with the classic false dichotomy regarding children with gender dysphoria. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? Given these options, what loving parent wouldn't choose to transition their child? Scared for my life, my parents were prepared to sign anything the doctors asked. This was not informed consent. It was a decision forced under extreme duress. At 15, I went under the knife for a radical double mastectomy, the kind that breast cancer patients get. This was after I was sexually assaulted at school by a male student. I just told myself to man up, but I lived my life in constant hatred of my breasts. I started binding, which deformed my breasts as well as my ribcage. I was afraid, and I couldn't wait to finally protect my body from the threat of further molestation. At 16, I finally realized what happened to me, and that I had made a huge mistake. I realized the beauty of motherhood was stolen from me by medical professionals who my family entrusted me to. I realized after maturing a bit more that a child does not, in fact, know who they are at 12 years old. I realized that I wanted to be what I always was, and forever will be, a woman. With this realization came a series of challenges that were far worse than the transition. Somehow, I had to get myself off these drugs and tell everyone in my entire life that I was not who I said I was. My parents were shocked and felt like they failed me on every level imaginable. My friends all turned against me because I was evidence that their beliefs were a lie. I was a joke. I was a fraud. I was many years behind in development, incapable of feeding my future children, and worst of all, completely alone. Even the medical professionals who got me into this mess now have no idea what to do with me, and they refuse to help me. It almost killed me, as it has killed many who regret transition. The big question still remains. I was a 12-year-old introduced to the idea that they could do something as ridiculous as change their sex. I was and still am the type of kid that never really fit into social norms. I was a tomboy, I was shy, I didn't socialize easily. At 11, I made my first Instagram account. I had unmonitored internet access. It wasn't long until I was exposed to a ton of LGBTQ content online. And I had never seen anything like it. You mean that all I have to do is subscribe to this ideology, and then I'm an accepted, celebrated, and valued member of the most talked about community on earth? Transgender people are the most celebrated subset of this community. I saw the unbelievable amounts of praise and attention they got online, and subconsciously I yearned to have a piece of it. With every milestone in my medical transition, I was given more and more attention and celebration. It was the ultimate high. Even in person, I got more attention. Girls would have crushes on me, and I would have people come up to me in the hallways asking to make friends, and it was unprecedented for me. I felt like a celebrity. Being a kid, I didn't know just how superficial these relationships were until they all suddenly abandoned me just for struggling to become who I am. Much of this gender confusion is based on old regressive stereotypes of men and women, which are now being reinforced with hormones and surgeries. Women can have short hair and be interested in playing sports and partaking in physical activities. Men can grow their hair out and wear makeup. It does not change their biology. The truth is, this practice is harming more and more children every day. What will we do to protect this most vulnerable group? Up until now, the media has been parroting the same ideologically driven talking points. Affirm, affirm, affirm. The closest I've touched to mainstream media is a Forbes journalist who wrote a hit piece on me calling basic human biology transphobic. There are many detransitioners speaking out, and they are ignored by the institutions most responsible for the search of truth. Up until today, most politicians on the left and right have done nothing but get into Twitter fights on this issue. There is no second chance at childhood, so we must do our best as adults to guide our children to pathways that lead to healthy bodies and minds instead of depression and disfigurement. No child deserves to suffer under the knife of a gender-affirming surgeon. America's children, all children, deserve better. Thank you.
As you can see, Chloe's story is so important. It is extremely important. We're so proud of her for being brave enough to come out and tell it. But her story isn't just one. There are many behind her.